The first time I realized my HOA wasn't just a little strict was the day I got fined for grass that was not even tall enough to cast a shadow. I'm serious. I stood there in my driveway with a violation notice in my hand, staring at my lawn like it had personally betrayed me, and I remember thinking, wow, I'm being bullied by a woman with a clipboard and too much free time. And if you've ever lived under an HOA, you already know what I mean when I say this. It doesn't start as a war. It starts as a paper cut, then another, until you're bleeding and everyone's acting like it's normal. In my neighborhood, that paper cut machine had a name, Brenda. Not President Brenda, not board member Brenda, not even elected Brenda, because that's the funniest part. She acted like she was the queen of the HOA board, but she carried herself like she'd been crowned by the universe itself. Like the rules weren't written by humans, they were handed down from a mountain, and she was the only one who could translate them for the rest of us peasants. And for some reason, maybe because my house was on the corner, maybe because I didn't smile the right way the first time we met, maybe because I had a job and a life and didn't treat the HOA like my religion, my place became her favorite target. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you it was something every week. One week, my grass was a 1/4 inch too long, not an inch, not overgrown. A 1/4 inch. I actually went outside with a ruler like an idiot just to see if I was losing my mind. Another time, she cited me because a single weed looked like it might be thinking about sprouting in my flower bed. One week I got dinged because my trash cans were visible for 5 minutes too long after pickup, like the neighborhood would collapse if the bins had the audacity to exist in daylight. And the worst part wasn't even the money at first, it was the feeling. You know that feeling when someone is watching you. Not in a romantic way, not in a friendly, neighborly way, more like a hawk circling, waiting for you to slip. I'd pull into my driveway after a long day, and before I even put the car in park, I'd catch myself scanning the street like I was expecting an ambush. Because with Brenda, it always was. Every notice came with that same tone, too cold, smug, and weirdly personal. Like she was enjoying it. Like she got a little spark of joy stamping violation on my life. At first, I did what a normal person does. I tried to talk to her. I caught her one afternoon when she was doing her usual slow walk past my house, clipboard tucked into her arm, head tilted like she was inspecting museum pieces. I stepped out and said, "Hey, Brenda, can we talk for a second?" She turned with this smile that didn't reach her eyes, and I explained calmly, politely that I worked long hours, that I kept my place up the best I could, that some of these citations felt excessive. And she just smirked. That's the word for it, smirked. Like I'd told her a joke. "Rules are rules," she said. That was it. No compassion, no common sense, no hint that she understood what being human even looked like. Just rules are rules, like she was a robot programmed to ruin weekends. So I kept my head down. I mowed, I trimmed, I pulled weeds, I moved my trash cans the second the truck rolled away like I was in some kind of suburban sprint event. And still every week, another fine, another notice, another little reminder that Brenda had decided I wasn't allowed to relax in my own home. Then came the mailbox. Now listen, this wasn't some rusty, falling apart mess. It was standard, perfectly functional. Black metal, clean, sturdy, the kind of mailbox you could see in 100 neighborhoods and never think twice about. But Brenda thought it was unsightly. I don't even know what that means for a mailbox. Like, what did she want, a marble sculpture? A gold-plated post with mood lighting? A tiny doorman. She cornered me one evening when I was walking up my driveway, and she didn't even bother with small talk. "You need to replace that," she said, nodding at the mailbox like it offended her personally, with what I asked. And she told me like she was doing me a favor, that there was a preferred model the HOA liked. Then she handed me a printout like she'd prepared for this moment, showing this ridiculously expensive mailbox that cost over $500. $500 for something that holds junk mail and pizza coupons. I stared at the paper, then stared at her, and I actually laughed. Not a cute laugh either. The tired, disbelieving kind. "I'm not buying a $500 mailbox," I said. Her face didn't change much. Brenda had that practiced I'm above emotion thing down, but I saw it in her eyes. That little flicker of anger. Like I'd broken the script she'd written in her head, where I obediently said, "Yes, ma'am," and ran to the store. "Well," she said slowly, "then you'll be fined for non-compliance." I thought she was bluffing. I truly did. I thought maybe she was just trying to scare me into spending money. I thought, surely the board wouldn't let her do something this stupid. Yeah, welcome to my life. The fine started immediately, $50 a week for my non-compliant mailbox. Every week, like clockwork. At first I told myself I could write it out. Maybe the board would notice, maybe someone would step in, maybe Brenda would get distracted by someone else's shrubs. But months went by, and that stack of bogus fines turned into real money. Enough money that it stopped being funny and started feeling like theft wearing a polo shirt. And what made it worse was the powerlessness of it. If you've never been in that situation, it's hard to explain. It's not just the fine, it's the way the system is set up so you feel like you're screaming into a pillow. You get a notice, you respond politely, you ask for clarification, you try to follow the process. And on the other side is someone like Brenda who treats the process like a weapon. So one night after another long day, I sat at my kitchen table with those papers spread out like a bad tarot reading. And I realized something: if I kept playing nice, she'd keep bleeding me. I couldn't fight her alone, not with casual conversations and polite emails, because Brenda didn't speak that language. She spoke control and she spoke consequences. So I did what any exhausted, fed-up homeowner would do when the little guy gets tired of being little. I sued the HOA. And just saying that felt like lighting a match in a dark room. I gathered everything, every violation notice, every fine, every email I'd sent, every time I'd tried to be reasonable. I took photos of my mailbox from every angle like it was evidence in a murder case. I printed the HOA bylaws and highlighted anything that mattered until the pages looked bruised. Because I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I could feel it. I was fighting for every neighbor Brenda had ever cornered, every person she'd scared into compliance, every homeowner who'd swallowed their frustration because they didn't want trouble. Trouble had already found me. I just decided to stop letting it kick its shoes off in my living room. The legal battle wasn't quick. It wasn't neat. It was stressful in a way that sits in your chest and makes your shoulders tight even when you're trying to sleep. The HOA fought back hard, and when I say the HOA, I mean Brenda with the HOA's checkbook. They hired a slick lawyer who talked fast and smiled like a salesman. Their whole strategy was to make me look like some kind of crank who refused to follow simple community standards. They acted like I was the problem, like I was the one disrupting peace, like I'd woken up one morning and decided to attack an innocent organization that only wanted harmony and pretty mailboxes. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking, you people are charging me $50 a week because one woman doesn't like the way my mailbox looks. But I kept my cool. I stayed organized. I told myself the truth had weight, even if it didn't always feel like it in the moment. Finally, our court date arrived. That morning, I remember waking up before my alarm heart already thumping like it knew something big was coming. I dressed slower than usual, like my body was trying to buy time. I double-checked my folder, my photos, my printed bylaws, my timeline. I probably checked it all 3 times. Walking into that courtroom felt surreal. You spend months living with this daily stress, then suddenly you're in a room with a judge in a robe and fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and it hits you. This is real now. This is where the game changes. Brenda was there, of course. Sitting upright, shoulders back, face perfectly composed, smug as ever. She looked like she'd already imagined her victory speech in her head. Like she was about to watch me get put in my place. I caught her eye for a second, and she didn't even blink. She just gave me this tiny, satisfied smile, like she was saying, "You shouldn't have tried." The judge listened to both sides patiently. Brenda's lawyer went first, and he laid it on thick how I was willfully violating the community's aesthetic standards, how the HOA had to enforce rules consistently, how my refusal to comply undermined the neighborhood. He spoke in that polished, confident tone that makes some people doubt themselves even when they're right. But when it was my turn, I didn't try to out-talk him. I didn't perform. I didn't get emotional even though I wanted to. I just presented facts. I showed the judge the photos of my mailbox, and you could see his expression shift, not dramatically, just a subtle change, like he expected something outrageous and got normal. He looked at the mailbox picture for a beat, then looked at me, and I swear his eyes said, "This is what they're mad about." Then I pulled out the bylaws and pointed to the section that mattered. There was no rule, none about specific mailbox models. No approved list. No brand requirement. Nothing. The only requirement was that the mailbox had to be in good repair. Mine was in good repair. Then I showed him the stack of fines. It was thick enough to make a sound when I set it down, that dull paper slap that tells you it's not a small misunderstanding. It's a pattern. And that's when the judge's patience shifted into something sharper. He asked questions. Real questions. Not the kind that make you nervous, the kind that make you hopeful. He asked Brenda's lawyer where exactly in the bylaws it said I had to buy that $500 mailbox. The lawyer tried to dance around it, talking about aesthetic standards and board discretion, but the judge wasn't buying the performance. Then he said something I will never forget. He called the HOA's actions arbitrary and capricious. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but even I knew that wasn't good for them. He ruled completely in my favor, all those fines wiped out. Gone. Like they never existed. For a second, I felt light. Like someone had cut a rope off my ankle. I could breathe again. But the judge wasn't done. He flipped through some documents. The HOA had submitted their own paperwork, and you could see him pause like he'd found something interesting. He looked up and said basically that there was a rule in their own materials about mailboxes needing to clearly display the house number for emergency services. And my house number was there, just not on the front, it was on the side. So he made a very specific ruling. He ordered me to put house number stickers on the front of my mailbox. And not just any stickers, he specified the exact type. 3-inch weatherproof reflective stickers. I nodded like a saint. Yes, Your Honor, I said, all calm and respectful. Inside I was grinning like I'd just been handed a loophole wrapped in a bow. Because if Brenda wanted to play mailbox games, fine, I could play too. I walked out of that courthouse feeling 10 feet tall. Not because I'd won money or pride, but because for the first time in months, the power balance had shifted. The law had seen what she was doing, and it didn't shrug. And I went straight to the hardware store. Not later, not the next day, immediately. I stood in that aisle looking at number stickers like I was choosing paint for a masterpiece. Reflective, big, bold. And then I saw them. Neon green. Not a classy green. Not a tasteful accent green. Neon. The kind of green that looks like it glows even when the lights are off. The kind of green you'd put on a bike helmet so cars don't hit you at night. I grabbed them, paid, and drove home with this quiet, petty joy humming under my skin. When I got to my mailbox, I took a second and looked around. The neighborhood was calm. Birds. Wind. That normal suburban quiet that always feels a little fake when you know drama is brewing. Then I slapped those neon green reflective numbers right on the front. They were hideous. They were perfect. Against the black metal, they clashed so badly it was almost impressive. And at night they lit up like a radioactive beacon when headlights hit them. This wasn't just compliance. This was malicious compliance, the kind where you follow the order so precisely it becomes a silent middle finger. I went inside, made myself dinner, and for the first time in a long time, I ate without that knot in my stomach. The next morning, I walked outside with my coffee already half smiling because I couldn't wait to see those ugly numbers catching the sunrise. And the stickers were gone. Not falling off, not peeling, gone. Cleanly removed like someone had taken their time. Like someone had stood there and scraped them off with focus. I didn't even have to guess who did it. I just stood there for a second staring at the blank mailbox front, and I felt this slow, cold amusement spread through me. Because if you're the kind of person who sneaks onto someone's property at night to remove court-ordered house numbers, you're not smart. You're just bold. And bold people make mistakes. I went inside and pulled up my security camera footage, and there she was. Brenda, in the dead of night wearing dark clothes like she was in a low-budget spy movie, creeping up to my mailbox hunched over like she thought the shadows were going to protect her from reality. She pulled out something, a scraper, a tool, I don't know, and she went to work peeling those numbers off like she was proud of herself. I watched the whole thing with my jaw tight, not because I was shocked, but because I couldn't believe she'd just handed me the easiest win of my life on a silver platter. You could see her face in the footage, too. Clear, no doubt, no mystery. I saved the video file, backed it up twice, and I didn't say a word to her. I didn't confront her. I didn't knock on her door. I didn't write a spicy email. Because the minute you're dealing with someone like Brenda, you learn something real fast. They want you emotional. They want you reactive. They want you to give them a messy fight they can twist into harassment or neighbor conflict. So I did the opposite. I went back to court. I filed a motion for contempt, attached the video, and I let the law do what polite conversation never could. When the judge saw it, I wish you could have seen his face. It wasn't just disappointment. It was that rare kind of anger you see when someone disrespects the court itself. Like she hadn't just messed with me, she'd spit on the authority of the whole system. He summoned Brenda back to court. And this time she did not walk in looking smug. This time she looked smaller, tight mouth, rigid shoulders, eyes darting like she was trying to find an exit that didn't exist. The judge played the video for the courtroom. Full screen, no ambiguity. No, he said, she said. Just Brenda, the self-appointed queen, sneaking onto my property at night and ripping off court-ordered stickers like a child throwing a tantrum. You could feel the air change. Even people who didn't know the whole story leaned forward because the footage told you everything you needed to know about who she was. The judge lectured her not gently. He talked about respecting the law, about the seriousness of contempt, about how court orders are not suggestions, no matter how much she disliked neon green. He found her in contempt of court, and he hit her with a massive fine payable to me for damages and legal fees. That alone would have been satisfying. That alone would have been enough to make me walk out grinning. But then came the best part. The judge ordered the stickers to be replaced. And this time he specified they had to be professionally installed with permanent industrial-grade adhesive to prevent tampering, and the HOA had to pay for it. Not me, the HOA, meaning Brenda's little kingdom had to fund the exact thing she was trying to destroy. Then he topped it off like he was sealing an envelope. He issued a restraining order forbidding Brenda from setting foot on my property ever again. When he said that, I looked over at her just for a second, And the look on her face, it was priceless. Defeated. Humiliated. Like someone had finally yanked the crown off her head and made her see the mirror. She wasn't the queen. She was just a bully who'd gotten used to everyone stepping aside. After court, the fallout rolled through the neighborhood like fresh air after a storm. The HOA had to hire a professional, an actual professional, to come out and install a new set of numbers on my mailbox. And because the judge's order didn't say tasteful, didn't say subtle, didn't say match the neighborhood aesthetic, those numbers came back bigger, brighter, and even more obnoxiously neon than before. They were basically permanent now. Industrial adhesive means you're not peeling those off unless you bring tools and a dream. And every night when headlights swept across my driveway, those numbers lit up like they were announcing welcome home and also don't mess with me. Brenda was forced to step down from the HOA board in disgrace. I don't know if she resigned or got pushed out or quietly told to disappear. Honestly, I didn't care. I just know that one day her name wasn't on anything anymore and her little patrol walk stopped. The neighborhood, I swear to you, breathed. It was subtle, but it was real. People started waving again. Folks lingered outside a little longer. It's amazing how one person with a taste for control can change the temperature of an entire street. And my mailbox became a local legend. I had neighbors walk by and pause like they were looking at a monument. I had people chuckle and shake their heads. One guy down the street said, "Man, those numbers are ugly." And I just smiled and said, "Yeah, they sure are," because that was the point. Those numbers weren't decoration. They were proof. Proof that rules don't mean whatever the loudest bully says they mean. Proof that paper trails matter. Proof that just comply isn't always the right answer when compliance becomes extortion. And yeah, there's a lesson in this. Not the kind you put on a poster, but the kind you learn the hard way. Sometimes the people who scream rules or rules the loudest aren't doing it for order. They're doing it for power. They don't want a better neighborhood, they want a tighter grip. And if you let them, they'll keep squeezing until you can't breathe. What saved me wasn't being tougher or louder or meaner. It was being deliberate. Document everything. Save every notice. Take photos. Keep your emails. Follow the rules when they make sense, but don't let someone invent new ones just because they like watching you scramble. And when you're up against someone who thinks they're untouchable, sometimes the cleanest punch you can throw is simply handing their own behavior to a judge and letting consequences do the talking. Now, every time I pull into my driveway, I see those gloriously ugly neon numbers, and I can't help it. I smile. Because they're not just numbers. They're a monument to the day a regular homeowner finally said no. So let me ask you something. If you were in my shoes, would you have gone as far as I did, or would you have swallowed the fines just to keep the peace? And have you ever dealt with someone in an HOA or anywhere who used rules as a mask for control? Tell me what happened, and tell me where you think the line is between standing up for yourself and turning it into revenge.